Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time talking episode 15 of season 4 of Arrow called Taken. And this plot of the story bearing some rather notable similarities to some popular Liam Neeson movies is undoubtedly entirely intentional. And all in all, this is a fairly solid episode. Lots of interesting stuff going on with the characters, some nice action, and of course we get a guest appearance by Vixen, which is super, super cool. So let's just kind of get right down into things. As I said, the main thing here is they bring in the character of Vixen, who, of course, got her own brief half an hour little animated adventure that introduced her as a character into the CW verse. It was available on the CW Seed website. I did watch that when it came out and enjoyed it quite a bit. And the plan was always, okay, let's introduce this character, and then if the fans respond to it, let's see about bringing in the actress who's doing her voice to play this character live action. And this is Megalyn. I think. Well, her last name is extremely difficult to pronounce, and she supposedly goes by Megalyn. That's gonna be my attempt on her given name, Megalyn E.K., which is just sort of a shortening of her given of her proper surname. So she, as I said, this is the lady that did the voice of Vixen there. They've brought her onto the show, looking a little bit different than she did in the animated version, but again, some time has passed, so it's not unreasonable that she could have grown her hair out and modified her costume a little bit. Now, what's really interesting though is Vixen here is sporting some new tricks and some interesting little things going on here that we didn't see in the animated series. For example, she's able to smell that toy and able to use that to track down William. Well, that's not something that she could do in when we saw her, the animated version of her. But again, time has passed. It's not unreasonable to think she could have picked up a new trick or two. But the thing that really threw me off was when she meets up with Laurel, these two know each other. Um, in the animated series, Oliver and Barry go to Detroit and meet up with Vixen, but Laurel doesn't. So that kind of really left me scratching my head. But apparently, the writers have already kind of figured out what they want to do with the second season of Vixen, and that apparently involves her meeting Laurel at some point. And these events take place after that. So it's certainly confusing to people who are watching the show right now, but whenever they get the second season of Vixen out there, it's going to be like, oh, okay. So, all right. That's all stuff that I can kind of consider to be forgivable, especially since the show's creators say, like, look, okay, we get why you're confused. Here's what's going on. And I really did like the way they visualized Vixen's powers. Oh, excuse me. That was probably one of the things I was most concerned about with doing this character in live action. Now, it does actually remind me very, very slightly of that old Brave Star cartoon. But yeah, in general, what they did with the animals, it worked really well, and it made it very easy to kind of get what Vixen's powers are and how she works. And it brings some of, as Charlie over on Emergency Awesome put it so nicely, it brings some of the spectacle that we're used to seeing on the Flash over into the Arrowverse, which is where we don't really get to see that really flashy comic book stuff very often. And it was definitely a nice change of pace. And for people who are having this as their first introduction to Vixen, I think that was a really nice move to really get them on board quickly with the character. And Vixen, she absolutely holds her own. I mean, she's a great guest star, and I mean, she's ultimately the one that destroys Damien Dark's totem or whatever the hell that thing is. And yeah, I mean, that's a huge win for Team Arrow, and it really makes her a key part of the story. She was able to come in and do something that nobody else could do, so it made sense for this character to be brought in. And I do like how they took the time to sort of mention John Constantine, so just kind of probably just to remind folks that he's still out there, and of course explain why they can't call on him again. Again, I'm one of those people that's really on board with the idea of maybe trying to get him as part of season 2 of Legends of Tomorrow. People have also said like maybe we could do that with Vixen. They've also talked about maybe her getting her own live action series at some point, but right now the CW does seem to be rather saturated. I mean, it has three DC shows right now, so it's kind of understandable that they might not want to go too much further with this at the moment. But here, I think they've definitely established Vixen's bona fides as a character to the fans in general, to people who may not have seen the animated series. So I have a feeling there will be a lot more call for us to see this character again. Um, so let's see. What else do we have to talk about here? Nothing really huge to say about the flashback. Again, I'm just like, what in the hell is in this cave? I got no idea. No idea what they could be doing in there. Once again, the whole theme of fathers comes up again. We get to see Laurel having some time with her dad, Diggle talking about being a dad, Oliver going out there, like, I'm going to do whatever it is it takes to save my son. And I really loved that part where Thea talks with Malcolm and is like, man, I can't help but wonder what Robert would say if he could see me now. And man, that's untapped potential. I mean, if Oliver can have all these crazy hallucinations of Shadow and stuff, man, can you imagine him hallucinating Robert or Moira? Oh man, that would be awesome. I would love to see Oliver hallucinate Robert Queen. That would kick ass. I mean, Robert Queen was never really that well fleshed out as a character, but still, this would be a huge thing. That would be so cool. And Malcolm kind of absolutely loses it once again, but he does have that great moment where he points out, like, look, I'd rather you be alive and hate me than love me and be dead. And man, Malcolm's a bastard, but he means every word of that. And I love how Thea just sort of points out, it's like, look, man, Malcolm, I'm so sick of this. No matter what, no matter how many chances I give you, no matter how much I want to believe in you, you always do this. You always manipulate and lie to me and use me, and I just can't take it anymore. And the sad thing is, though, what Malcolm says there, I'd rather you hate me and be alive, than you love me and be dead. Say what you want about his actions. That, as a motivation, is, that's real parental love. You know, I've mentioned before that I have kind of a background in education, working with people and teaching and all of this. And one of the things you see is with people, especially if you're dealing with teenagers, is a lot of parents who just are afraid of the idea of their kid being mad at them, or they want their kid to be their friend. And that's all well and good, but sometimes as a parent, you have to you can't be their friend. And it's the same with being a teacher. You can be friendly to them, but you can't be their friend, because there has to be that line there. That has to be that authority. Now, of course, once kids become adults, then it's a different story. But the point I'm trying to be here is that parents cannot always be their kids' friends. Sometimes they do have to do those hard things that make the kids angry with them, because that ultimately is what's for their own good. And as twisted as what Malcolm is trying to do here, he is doing all of this in a way for what he believes to be Thea's own good. Him trying to protect her. Now, we're talking about the big picture and such. Now, if Malcolm has officially joined Hive, and the last episode did heavily imply that, if he's in on what their big plan is, then he probably would want to say, it's like, hey, Hive, whenever you do your evil destroy the world thing, um, obviously I'm going to want a place in your little fallout shelter for myself, and oh yeah, my daughter too. Hmm, something to think about, isn't it? And if securing that means that he has to sacrifice Oliver and Oliver's kid and all of this, well, so be it. Malcolm's not going to hesitate to do that. Um, Moving on. Getting back to the whole fathers thing. Um, the whole thing with Laurel, her that great conversation she has with her dad. It's like, man, Dad, Oliver has and I. It's been over between us for a long time, and I knew he was cheating on me. But this whole thing with him having a kid, it's just kind of really opening those old wounds. And Quentin is totally there. He is totally there, being a cool, supportive dad. And it was so nice to watch him and Laurel just have those moments where they're sitting at the office, just eating and laughing and talking, and just having good father-daughter time. So cool stuff there. Uh, Now, of course, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Samantha as a character. Now, I've been pretty hard on Samantha as a character before, but here, this episode really does a lot to humanize her. She apologizes to Laurel for cheating with Oliver, and she says, like, look, I knew you and Oliver together, but I wanted to do him anyway, even if it was just that one time. But Laurel's kind of like, yeah, it's cool. This was totally Oliver's fault. Now, Laurel, it does take two to tango, but in all fairness, yeah, Oliver was officially in a relationship with you. So he's more responsible for hurting you in that situation than she is. So I get what you're saying from where you're coming from, but man, that was also you were really passe about that one. Okay, whatever. Um, nice mention of Barry Allen being the one that points Samantha in the right direction. Hey, speaking of which, I hope season two of Vixen explains how Vixen knows who that Barry is the Flash. But anyway, I like how Samantha really kind of had that moment where she talked with Felicity and was like, "Look, Oliver really wanted me to let him be able to tell you about William, but I forbid him from doing that, and that tore him up inside." And Felicity handles that situation like, yeah, okay, I get it. And then ultimately at the end of it, she's all super pissed at Oliver. Even though in the last episode she was all like, yeah, sometimes people keep secrets for good reasons. And then there's that whole bit where she's like, you know, um, this whole what's going on with William and stuff, sending him away and all this. And Felicity's like, you did that without even telling me, but I'm a part of this too. I'm like, no, Felicity, you're not. You, in a few months' time, would at best be William's stepmother. And again, William has no idea that Oliver is his father, so yeah, sorry, you, in my book, don't get to have a say in this decision. This is legit between Oliver and Samantha. And that's kind of one of the big things with Felicity in this episode is that, well, she's being run by her feelings rather than by logic. And under the circumstances, of course, this is perfectly understandable. But it does kind of get my goat that she comes into this situation acting as if she has some sort of a right to make decisions for William. When, no. I mean, yes, as basically a stepmom, she would, once William knows the truth in some way, probably be an important person in his life. But at the end of the day, this is ultimately has to be William's parents who decide what is best for him. Now, granted, she's going to be Oliver's wife, and important decisions that Oliver makes about his life, well, yeah, it would make sense that Felicity would be a part of that. But this whole situation with William, this really feels like Felicity's butting into something that she is not a part of, or at least she does not really have the right to be making decisions in that regard. And this whole leads to her, just basically calling the engagement off. And remember, when we see the flash forward in the future, Felicity is not wearing that ring. So, hmm. Now, of course, it's all super convenient that that's also the moment when the chip kicks in and she's just able to walk out the door. And it's just like, oh, she's walking out on Oliver. Oh, God. I mean, comic books shows are not exactly known for their subtlety, but come effing on. But anyway, this is another great episode for Dig to come in there and sort of lay some important advice on Oliver, about what it means to be a good father. And we've seen, Dig's a good dad. He says, like, look, man, I know where my daughter is every minute of the day. I know who's looking after her when I'm not around, and I make sure that she sees me every day. And I mean, that's just good stuff. Dig is coming in there and providing that kind of wisdom that nobody else in Oliver's life can really come in there and provide. And, I mean, that's just awesome for Dig. Actually, to go back to people being pissed off at Oliver for reasons that are a little unfair, like when they reveal the whole thing about William being his son, and they're like, "Oh, who knows about this? Oh, Barry knows, and Thea knows, and Malcolm Merlin knows," and it's just like, Thea, you might want to speak up that you figured it out, that Oliver didn't tell you. You kind of figured it out based on some complicated evidence he didn't want anyone to know. And again, Oliver didn't tell Malcolm because he was like, "Hey, Malcolm, guess what? We got something in common and you'll never guess what it was." And he didn't tell Barry because it's like, "Hey, Barry, we're buds, man. I got to tell you something." Kind of clarifying that would have probably been helpful in that situation. But again, there's only 42 minutes. And of course, when secrets come out of the wash on a show like this, they have to come out in the most spectacularly horrible way possible. And that's exactly what happens this episode. But still, that did feel like, yeah, somebody really should speak up to clarify exactly what's going on in this situation, because just letting things hang there like that is only making the situation worse, and you all should realize that. Let me see. Anything else? Oh yeah. Nothing particular to say about the campaign manager guy. He just was like, dude, explanation, please. It's like, look, man, people have tried to kidnap Oliver's friends. Actually, did kidnap a bunch of Oliver's friends and family. Murdered some of his campaign staff. Attempted to kill him, and paralyzed his fiance. Is it really that difficult to believe that even after all that, Oliver might have just woken up that morning and said, "You know what? On second thought, I can't take this after all"? I mean, granted, it would have been nice if Oliver had said, "Oh, yeah, all that stuff, that's totally why I'm doing this, dude." But still, seeing this, though, kind of makes me go like, well, what the heck was the point of this guy as a character? If this is the end of him, because his romance with Thea certainly didn't go anywhere. And speaking of Thea, how badass was that though? Like bending over backwards, shooting her arrows off the back of the bike. Oh man, that was cool. And oh yeah, the cops have apparently arrested Damien Dark. And man, you take away that dude's magic, and Oliver was able to whip him good. I really was wishing for Oliver to say something like, "Oh, gotten a little rusty since your League of Assassin days, have we?" Also, very nice touch in having Damien Dark recognize Vixen's necklace and be like, "Oh yeah, when you're dead, I'm gonna have some. I'm sure I can find something fun to do with that little trinket." And of course, him being familiar with it from the past, that was also kind of cool. But yeah, so what does Damien Dark getting arrested mean for Ruve Adams? I mean, is it a matter of public record that he's her son? I mean, her husband? Um, and again, if Damien Dark is in the clink, well, you really think old Malcolm Merlin isn't going to try and play that to his advantage within Hive? Interesting, huh? Oh, well, folks, I think that's enough for now. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And also, please join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Until next time, take care and have a good one.